Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 4 Wide Podcast. This is episode 9, 10. That's wild to me. And, we're all here. We're all killing it, I guess. Half asleep, fully asleep. We don't know anymore. But I'll tell you somebody that isn't asleep right now, and that's Kent. How you doing today, Kent?
I'm actually in the process of nodding off, no, I'm just kidding. I'm fantastic. Who needs sleep? Not this guy.
You are looking fantastically red right now, let me tell you.
It's like
You
my
got some
hat.
bright-looking cheeks today.
It's got to be the green. I don't know. I was feeling Christmassy, so I'm wearing green and got the red cheeks. Thank you, Cole.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I also noticed that he scooted his camera up this week for...
Oh my gosh.
Oh, he's turned redder, guys.
I didn't think it was possible.
We can go full blown Georgia Bulldog red. I mean, full blown like Blake's shirt red. But no, I think I like this distance a little bit better. If I'm being completely and totally upfront with you guys.
I'm
Hey,
kind of
buddy,
upset,
I hate to
but
break it to you, but my shirt's orange.
I'm really disappointed.
Yeah, Blake's wearing the orange shirt.
I do have a red hat on, though.
Yeah.
All right, then Blake's hat. There you go. All right, well, now that I see, okay, yeah, no, that's definitely orange. Oh, well, anyways.
We also...
Man.
We're off to a good start.
We got Austin with us today, of course, as always. That's the song My People right there.
Yep.
And we got Blake with us today as well.
Oh, what's up, guys?
Yeah, we're all here and we're ready to talk about this interesting week that was Martinsville. I'm interesting, underline, this week. Of course, if you guys ain't following the podcast on Instagram or on Facebook, you can just find it, standard name on Facebook, but the Instagram user is at FOURWIDE. Make sure you follow that so you can see all the cool graphics that Kent makes and the funny songs that he decides to choose for certain particular drivers. Maybe a little pettiness involved. We never know. It's not like he's giving away with a smile right now. But
How about that Chase Elliott suspension, huh?
Oh yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Mm.
I woke up this morning, seen it, and like, you know what? Kent would never post anything wrong.
No, not at all. Not me. I ain't about no fake news.
Never done it before, never will.
Never.
So I guess we'll be seeing Chase Elliott in 2027, guys. Sorry to hear it. It's not like he's going to win a race the next 2 years, anyways. Let's
that's a hot take.
Nice. There's a hot take. There's a hot take. You might be onto something, but man, golly,
He'll run about 5th to 10th.
on a good day.
Yeah.
We know if Kent picks him, he definitely ain't winning no race.
No, that was the effect of the curse, right? Like he was definitely going to win, and I picked him, and his car was so good that he was like, man, I still finished 4th. But man, that was tough.
I feel like at the end of the year, we should just have you write a letter to each driver.
Apologizing.
Each driver that I've picked and apologize. I should name their race that I picked them and where they finished and say, this was completely my fault. There's been some bad ones, especially in the Xfinity Series. I mean, golly.
It was wild. Cole and I were looking at each other, and I think Almirola was running like 3rd or 4th among like our group. And I'm like, it's time for the Kent curse to set in. And I kid you not, it wasn't 5 laps later. Whoever you picked was in the wall.
Well, all right, so I picked Blaney at Homestead, and the man showed up with the fastest car. And absolutely, he didn't grenade that engine. He nuked it. I mean, he absolutely nuked. There was a mushroom cloud over Miami. It was bad. And, I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't know. I'm sorry, Ryan Blaney. If you're listening to this, it was my fault. I gave you some bad mojo and blew your engine. But man.
Cole and I were talking, we're like, this has to be beyond just coincidence at this point.
One would think that I'm sitting, here like trying to lose and doing curses over these drivers, but I'm not.
Kid has his Ouija board every time he picks.
Turns out
That's right.
he just has a little voodoo doll with their car, and he just pokes it throughout the race.
All I do is I give it to Wesley to play with, right? He's playing with it on the floor, and then, man, he throws it against the wall. Man, we got a car in the fence, anyways.
You ruined Corey Day's day as well because you picked him in trucks and his Xfinity car actually sucked too. So
Yeah, that was. What's up with that? Anyways,
oh boy,
I'm never picking Byron again. Like, I'm just staying away. I'm staying away.
I'm not picking him for the Truck Series again. That is for sure.
That was a bummer.
That was
I
a
bet you
dang
won't pick
shame, is
Larson
what
in
that was.
Martinsville either.
Man, that sucked. Finishing fifth, and I still get fourth. That's the name of the game, though. Sometimes.
Look, I finished.
Third.
Yeah. Well, I thought for sure. I didn't even look at the results. I just saw. All right, Elliott's fourth, and I knew Austin. Who did you pick?
I picked
The
Danny.
winner.
You picked Hamlin. All right, so I knew you picked Hamlin, and I was like, all right, I know. It's like surely not like second and third. Like I've got this. I was runner up this week, and then I sent that text. I was like, P2, I'll take it. And y'all are like, actually, and I'm like, frick.
Cole said, no,
What are
no,
the
no,
odds?
no.
No,
Not today.
Not in my house.
Hey, that just shows what great pickers we are.
Yeah.
Top 5.
Yeah.
Man, the only thing I could pick this year is my nose.
Relatable. All right, boys. So the Truck Series, the Boys and Girls Club of Blue Ridge 200. Of course, Corey Heim had the fastest lap. I mean, my God. 10 cautions for 69 laps. Nice. And 5 lead changes with 5 trucks. So the finishing order for the top 10 is Hamrick got the dub. He had Tyler Ankrum, Garcia, Chandler Smith, Ben Rhodes, Corey Heim, Andres Perez de Lara, Raja Karuf, Stuart Friesen. Lawless Allen actually got a top 10. I found that was wild. I was not expecting that at all. But, of course, being part of Tricon, that kind of helps a lot. They have a really good truck program. You got Mr. Riggs, P11, which was a surprise, and P14 in regards to Byron's performance, which Blake was kind of talking about. So, yeah, Austin, I've seen that. We'll talk about that here in a minute. I actually have it written down on my sheet over here. Trucks that did have issues, you had Frankie had a rear end failure towards the end of the race. He was in the back most of the race anyways, but he was having a good time. His radio was very interesting.
Rear end failure. That's what we call diarrhea.
Yeah, same. That is the Golden Corral special right there. Grant Enfinger actually had a DVP clock. It's the first time I think I can recall one in the Truck Series being scored as a DVP, which that truck was absolutely destroyed. Corey Day had suspension issues. Norm Benning, the 73-year-old, he had brake issues, guys. So that's
Say
what's
it
wrong.
ain't so.
That was what was wrong with Mr. Norm Benning. I'm sure he had a fast truck. I'm sure he was top 5 worthy, like he was at Daytona. And Ryan Roulette had, in the quotation marks, his handling issues, is what they put down. But I swear, guys, those 2 trucks that did not make this race, I don't know how slow they were, but if they were slower than Ryan Roulette's truck, oh my gosh. I mean, don't know. I've seen some slow cars and trucks in my days. Burton Myers was fairly slow, but like Ryan Roulette was just crazy slow.
I'll be honest. This week, I attempted something with a buddy of mine who's actually going to be at Darlington this weekend. It's his first Cup race, so that's going to be interesting. But we fixed the left rear wheel bearing on my Subaru. And turns out when I was driving down the road on Friday, we had not tightened all the way the axle nut. And that thing just started wobbling. I mean, it was sketchy. Made it back, tighten that sucker up. We're good to go. Car's great. Everything's fine. Wheel stayed on. Praise God, we're good. I still think I could have passed him on the track. I mean, I'm just going to throw that out there. I still think that Subaru could have done better in that race than that truck. But anyway, I just wanted to put that out there.
I think SVG's pit crew's hiring. If you can't put a wheel on, I mean, I think you'd be all right.
At least for a 2-week internship or something.
Well, he had the issue this week, and then was it 2 weeks ago? Like it was like 4 or 5 different tire failures and all kinds of mess with his ride. But Yeah, so it was a great week of racing, and great week. It was entertaining, that's for sure, until you got to Sunday. Corey Heim should have had his fourth win of the year, and I mean, he was checked out. Like, if he was on a restart and he got out, he was done. The pace was ridiculous, and if he wasn't door slammed by Honeycutt on that restart, and then Majeski kind of pushed the issue behind him. So I went back and rewatched this because initially I just thought that it was the door slam that Honeycutt did that sent Heim's tire essentially to cut down, but Majeski was actually pushing him through the corner at the same time. So that's the second thing Majeski was involved with this particular weekend. And I mean, I know Austin's probably a little bit gutted by this because this could have been the fourth win of, or really, technically, let's see here. He could have won 5 wins this year already of the 9 that he predicted. Like, it's been absolutely wild this year.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that Majeski got into Honeycutt because, and obviously, Cole, you and me were sitting in turn 1, and so I couldn't really see it. I mean, from our standpoint, it looked like that Honeycutt and Heim. It didn't look egregious from Honeycutt by any means, but it looked like just a simple racing incident. But I had no idea that Majeski had gotten into him, so I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, he was on the back bumper of Heim and just kind of catapulted him out, and he got into that rough stuff. So, I mean, the tire could have already been down at that point, but also you got to think you're going through that different groove of pavement. That change of pavement could have pretty much accelerated that, where maybe Heim wouldn't have spun out, and he could have got to pit road and changed the tire and may have been in the top 15, and he would have drove back because he had to go all the way to the back, and he ended up finishing 6th.
Yeah, that is for sure.
What do you think about this, Austin? I know that you're, of course, following Heim pretty closely this year.
Yeah, I caught the last 40 laps of the race, so I didn't get to see all of it in its entirety. So by the time I got to it, Heim had already been kind of pushed to the back. But I think it speaks for itself. I mean, Heim has been in contention to win every single race this year, and it doesn't look like it's going to slow down anytime soon. So curious to see. You got to think going into Bristol, he's going to be the clear favorite next week. So I'm not worried. About him. I still think my prediction will be true. He's far and wide the best truck driver on the racetrack right now. Got a lot of races still left to go. I think he's going to hit the 9. But man, yeah, it's just unlucky. I mean, if it wasn't for that, that and what was the other race he messed up at?
Miami.
Miami.
Well, his engine messed up. Yeah.
Yeah. If it wasn't for those two, he'd be more than halfway there already. So. Yeah, I think Heim's gonna be fine. And overall, what I saw the truck race, it was a heck of a lot better than the Xfinity race. Granted, I saw
no doubt.
I didn't see the entire race, but saw the ending. Ending was good. I thought it was a pretty decent ending for a truck race. So,
I bet you can't. Were you able to watch the truck race at all?
I watched a good portion of it, and then there towards the end, I wasn't able to keep up with it as much. I can't remember what I had going on Friday night, but anyways, no, I just and I know that y'all are gonna get into it, but and I know y'all are already talking favorites for next week, and we'll pick at the end of this episode. But that 19 truck just has a knack for running good, especially on short tracks. I mean, you look at where it and how it ran last year. And it was not a surprise at all to see it up there at the front. And then this year when I saw the 19 had won it, I was like, man, I'm not surprised by this, but I maybe was a little bit more surprised when I remembered the name that was driving it, and I was like, okay, but gosh, he has been through so much, and trying to find a place that he can succeed. I think he's there now. You talk about guys who could, if they get hot, they could get several wins. That 19 truck is one that could go off.
Sure. Also, Heim did bring up an interesting point about this race. So, like I said before, we had 10 cautions, and those 10 cautions were 69 laps of the race, right? Heim felt like they were kind of riding around a lot during the caution. Like they could have gone back, 2 to 3 laps sooner on a lot of the cautions, which in turn, given how much Heim would make on, distance on restarts and stuff like that, um, plus the laps, he could have easily probably climbed all the way back up and challenged for the win. So, what do you guys think about especially the way that they did Martinsville this year? It was more showcased during the Cup race, but where they would take the sweeper after every caution and pretty much clean off the track, make sure that it was clean for the drivers, but it did cut into a little bit of that race time, essentially. Is there any thoughts in regards to that?
I'll be honest, I didn't really think too much of it. Being there in person, it didn't seem like to me it affected much of it. I mean, obviously they probably mentioned it more on TV broadcast, but when I was sitting there in the fan, I mean, as a fan, I'm just thinking about, all right, what's coming up on this next caution? Who's going to be pitting? Who might be staying out? So to me, it was just like a bygone a little bit.
That's fair. What about you, Austin?
To be honest, on TV, I didn't notice it that much. It did feel like all weekend, well, not really for the CW, but basically from Fox, it felt like there were a lot more commercial breaks. And maybe that's why, it's because it took that extra time for them to clean the track off. But overall, though, didn't really notice it. It did feel like the races went longer. And granted, I mean, when you have over 15 cautions for one race and 10 for another, that adds to the time a great deal. But didn't really notice it from the broadcast perspective.
What about you, Kent? Did you notice anything different, more or less, or just kind of normal for you?
I mean, pertaining to cautions, I mean, nothing stood out. Like I said, I wasn't able to give it as much attention as I'd liked to, but nothing really stood out. But I've noticed this too, and again, if this gets, if y'all get tired of hearing this, then y'all say the word. But I feel like when you're at the track, so like I feel like if anyone was going to notice, it's going to be y'all that are at the track. But I've been, I've told y'all I've done some stuff on iRacing before and been on that. And I do remember thinking, man, these caution laps feel like they take forever. And because, for those of y'all who don't know on iRacing, the difference between that and like the game on your console, you don't hit a button and then it pits you and then you line back up for the green flag. You drive the caution laps, you drive down pit road, you go by the speed limit, you get yoinked for speeding if you speed and that sort of thing. And so, especially at a short track like Martinsville, there you take so many laps each caution that comes out. You feel like, what are we doing? Can we just race now? So I can definitely see how when you're in the car, especially when you're in a fast car and you're getting impatient and you're going, all right, can we just get this thing going green again because I got cars to pass, then I could see why he would feel that way. But, ultimately, as long as you're not logging laps waiting on them to come back from a commercial break, then, if they're just getting the track safe and making sure everyone's had an opportunity to pit, it is what it is.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. It didn't seem super egregious, but I did see his point, especially from being in the truck that should have won the race. He's of course going to have a perspective that's a little bit different, but I do think it's a nice transition that you did mention Hemrick because how could you not be just happy for someone like that getting a win? It's been a while. 2021-21 is Xfinity Championship, right, at Phoenix. Clinched that, essentially door slamming, which, I mean, was fair given there was a championship on the line, but it was one of the best Xfinity finishes that I can think of regarding a championship in a long time. Probably all guys would beat that out of recent memory now, but at least, it wasn't a last lap kind of deal thing. But, I mean, he's in a strong truck this year, and in all honesty, could see him making a deep run in the playoffs. That's why I picked him in my championship picks. But what do you have to say about this, Austin? What do you think? I know you said you didn't get to watch a lot of it, but how'd you feel about Hemrick ended up getting that win this week?
I mean, man, it's hard to not be happy for Hemrick. We all know the track record he's had with the Xfinity Series, and the one win he got was the win for the championship, and just hasn't had a lot of success. But he's been good. He's been decent. He's had a couple shots in Cup. Granted, not in the best rides, but man, I was happy to see him win the race. As much as I want Heim to break the record so my take can be accurate, I'm happy with seeing guys like Hemrick get a dub.
I was kind of gutted myself because I did want to see Honeycutt win at first. So when Honeycutt got sent into the corner with Majeski getting behind him and pushing him into the wall, and then taking Majeski out of the race as well. I was upset at that point, but I didn't understand that Hemrick was going to come and win this race. You had Ankrum, who probably looked like the strongest truck at the time, being up front. So it was cool to see Hemrick win. It's the first time I ever seen Hemrick win, obviously, because I was not at the championship race at Phoenix. I can tell you that. But it was cool to see him win. And it shows that stepping down is a logical decision path for some drivers. It's not really, and it couldn't even necessarily be considered a step down. It may be in regards to the ladder of NASCAR, but for someone's career, it could essentially stabilize them. So,
Well, can I ask y'all a question? And I know we're probably in a hurry, so y'all can make, we can make the answer quick and everything, but I'm just going to give y'all a would you rather. It's going to be a little bit different than Austin's that he gave me a little bit earlier. But yeah, would you rather? And we all know what Corey LaJoy says about Sunday racing on Sundays. Like, we don't have to reiterate that. We know what he says. We know what he thinks. Let me ask y'all: would y'all rather drive the 15 Rick Ware car on Sundays, or I'm not even gonna go. I'm gonna ask y'all if y'all would rather drive that car, or would you rather drive the 11 truck on Friday nights?
I mean, how could you want to not get in that 11 truck as fast as that freaking thing is? I'm also a very competitive person, so I want to be the best that I can be in the best opportunity that I can be in. So therefore, that would just be the logical decision to me, in all honesty.
Log laps races. I'll take the 11.
Yeah. I mean, you'd definitely be able to win a lot more. You'd probably get paid a lot more if you drove the 15 part-time, but, I mean, you'd also probably end up being just a nobody either. So, yeah, I'd probably take the 11 truck.
So my argument is, kind of to Cole's point, you can go up the ladder in NASCAR by taking some steps back. I think that is very obvious, and I think that that's something that like we've talked about with Hemrick. Hemrick had a shot, in the Cup Series. He's had a couple of shots here and there that we thought maybe this is it for him. Maybe this is, where he's going to take off and find success. But I guarantee you, if he wins 7 races in that 19 truck this year, he's going to go, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is fun. And it's going to open up better doors than he had before. So, anyways, we'll get to see some more of the backflip.
I think going down, too, can also help revive not just your career, but your perception also among the fans. Because, like, you look at, say Hemrick ran that 8 Childress car and finished 10 to 15th most days. I mean, I'm sure you probably have a couple playoff appearances, but would he have made a long run into the playoffs? Probably not. But you look at some guys like Elliott Sadler, who had a abysmal Cup career, really, goes down for a few years, makes a living in the Xfinity Series, and he was a daggum good Xfinity driver. You look at Justin Allgaier, granted he hadn't had a lot of great Cup opportunities, but he obviously made a great name for himself in the Xfinity Series. I think of, which he hadn't won recently, but I mean, growing up, your people like Matt Crafton and Johnny Sauter and Mike Skinner. It might not have been awesome Cup guys, but you know that they were good in the Truck Series, like Jack Sprague, some guys like that. I mean, it kind of made that series fun to watch because you almost had like your superstars just for your Truck Series.
Or hear me out. You could be like Haley Deegan and just leave NASCAR altogether and go IndyCar.
How's that working out for her?
Not well, from what I've seen.
I was genuinely asking because I have no clue. I don't follow IndyCar.
It's bringing a lot of eyeballs to the sport, but I don't know if there's.
I mean, okay.
No, I mean, it's like just with how popular she is among fans and sponsors, but I don't know what any results.
Also, I know what you're thinking. Just don't say it. I'll say this. Let me ask. I also don't follow IndyCar. Do they have like a development series, kind of like NASCAR has with the Xfinity and stuff like that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's essentially what she's in the.
It's Indy NXT is what it's called.
Okay.
Kind of like wrestling. That's interesting.
I couldn't speak to. I have no idea what wrestling is.
Couldn't tell you.
It's all good.
There
I
were
think there's
crickets right
college
after that.
wrestling.
Let me tell you, brother.
See, the reason I mentioned that is because Austin is like, me and Austin's talked about wrestling before, just in a general situation, but he just left me out to dry on that one, so that's all right. I see how it is. So, last point I want to make is Honeycutt had another great day, top 5 day. That's 3 consecutive weeks for him before he had that nice little trip into the corner, turn 1 and 2 that a lot of people have in Martinsville. I just wanted to shout that out more or less. Not really a discussion around that, but I mean, Nice's trucks are really strong. They always have been. I mean, your mind goes to like Ross Chastain, right? Had a fantastic run in the trucks. Of course, recent memory would go back to thinking about races like Darlington, for instance, for Ross Chastain. So, which will be interesting to talk about because Xfinity Series picks this week are going to be wild. Being Austin, we're talking about this earlier. There's no one that has a really good track record right now in Xfinity Series. Like Cole Custer was the only one that was decent, and now he's moved up to Cups. It's going to be very interesting this week. But speaking of Xfinity Series, what a transition. We had the Marine Corps 250 this week. God. 14 cautions for 104 laps.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize there were 14.
Yep. Dang, I have 2 things. I think it's 19 lead changes between 11 drivers. I have 2 written down here for some reason, so I have to double check that.
Wasn't there a red flag, too?
Yes. Yep. Yep, it was towards the end of the race. It had 2 drivers that failed to qualify, Dawson Cram and Tyler Tomasian. Just throw that out there. Sammy Smith had the fastest lap at the end of the race, got 1 point. I'm sure that really did dividends for hit the 50 that he lost.
49.
But, yeah.
A net loss of 49 points, man. What a day.
Now, that $25,000 fine that was handed down by NASCAR today. That's one of the good things about us recording today compared to Mondays like most people do, is a lot of the penalties and stuff come out on Tuesday, so we can actually address those. But noticeable finishes, Austin Hill scoots through the corner, kind of sent Allgaier into Sammy Smith. Sammy Smith came down on Allgaier all the same, and he's able to scoot by and get that steal of a win, 100% a steal. He had a good car most of the day, but he was like a top 5, top 6 car and ended up winning the race. Sheldon Creed, P2. My man's going to break through one day. I might have a beard like Santa Claus, but he'll get a win. Little Gator, P3. Brandon Poole, that was a great finish for him. P4. I didn't realize his hair was like bleach blonde. But P5, Sam Mayer. My God, this man was a literal monster truck this week. I told Blake earlier.
Just this week?
Well, this week in particular, it was crazy. I told Blake earlier, Sam Mayer is usually traditionally really good at Martinsville. Of course, my mind would go back to, him being with JRM in the 1 car. He's had some run-ins, we'll say, with drivers at Martinsville in particular, but he was able to get a P5 with the most. I mean, I don't know if him or Chris Buescher had a worse car in regards to damage this weekend, but I'll talk about Sam Mayer in a little bit. Dean Thompson, P6, he spun out twice during this race. He ended up finishing in the top 10. So, Daniel Dye, I mean, his car was probably one of the worst ones that were wrecked, but he had the, I guess, the privilege to go across the start-finish line before he plowed into the wall.
Privilege.
Yeah. And then P8, Ryan C. got another top 10. Ford's most consistent driver other than Mayer, I would say, so far this year. Chris Wright got P9. You heard me that. You heard me right.
You know the race is a cluster when that happens.
Oh, Lord. P10, you got Smith. P11, you got Jeb Burton, as Parker Kligerman calls him, the doll. P12, Zilich. It looked like he was on a whole different planet the whole entire first stage or 2, and then, of course, got pushed in someone, and they had to check up, essentially. And pretty much didn't ruin his day, but Eric Almirola, P13, talk about a disappointment for, someone that's in this podcast that's name starts with B. You hate to see it.
You hate it, man. Especially after he swept all of last year. I mean, and he didn't just sweep last year.
He dominated.
He walked the dogs with them last year.
And then, of course, the guy that was leading coming into turn 3 and 4, Gray, ended up finishing P23. Drivers with issues: Christian Eckes, Sanchez, Snyder, and Kyle Sieg all got into the same cluster, we'll call it, their day. And I hate it because I picked Sanchez this week. But
yeah, I'm really glad you took him because that was probably going to be my pick.
Yeah. And honestly, he was moderately okay. I thought he was definitely going to finish in front of Almirola, and then that happened. So, that's all right. I was leading Xfinity coming in this week. I'll take a bad week. It happens. Just ask Kent, and
That's
I love
cold,
Kent
bro.
so much.
That's cold, bro.
Look, you win some, you lose most. That's what I always say.
You had Jesse Love involved in the accident as well. His partner in crime, Austin Hill, may have had a little bit to help with that. And then the only failure, you had the Alfredo go boom boom this week. His engine failed, so hate to see it for him. So, well, man, I didn't even write it down because I know we were going to talk about it. Like, I've heard Junior talk about it today. I've heard Hamlin talk about it today. I've heard a lot of people talk about that last corner, but not just that last corner, the whole entire race, because it was going on consistently throughout the whole field. Those cars were absolutely destroyed. And the guy that actually won the race, he was a part of a lot of accidents. He caused a lot of issues. So, what do you guys just think about the Xfinity Series right now? You hate to see it because, honestly, I would say that it's been really good racing for the most part to this point.
So I've got to ask, can I guess what Junior's reaction was? I hadn't got a chance to listen to the download, but I'm going to guess that his reaction was, well, I don't agree with Sammy Smith on that move, but NASCAR's going to give him a pop on the wrist and he'll learn his lesson. Is that kind of?
No, actually, no.
No.
He was extremely stern about it.
He was irritable too.
Really?
I mean,
Yes.
So like
rightfully
frustrated
so.
with Sammy.
I
Yes.
think with Sammy and with the race.
Yeah.
I mean, I expected him to, be level headed enough to go, man, that was wrong. And I've heard him in the past where one of his drivers, royally messed up. After all, remember Sam Mayer used to drive for him. Where he has said, man, I do not agree with what my driver did. This is a teaching opportunity. And so I knew that this would be, one of those moments. But, I heard, who was it? Was it Kevin Harvick that said, man, Junior's going to have to just sit his driver? I mean, essentially,
Brad K tweeted that earlier.
okay, so Brad K. I don't know. Like, what do y'all think the answer is? I don't think that Junior can sit there from a sponsor standpoint as an owner and say, I'm going to sit a driver for doing that. I think he could support NASCAR's decision to sit him, but as an owner, I don't think you can park a driver for that. But I don't know. Like, you got to fix it somehow. But and NASCAR definitely handing out some fines and penalties is more than a slap on the wrist. This could be, make or break for some folks. I mean, I think it's fair to say had Sammy Smith won the race with that move, they would have treated it just like Austin Dillon, right? Like they would have said, look, you keep the win, but you don't get any of the playoff points. You don't get the, pass into the playoffs. You don't get that. This does not count towards the playoffs. But look, you got to win in your career, so congratulations. I mean, would y'all agree with that? Do y'all think NASCAR would have handled it that way? Beyond that, what can they do? What does NASCAR do to keep them from, ARCA-ing it up, if we can turn that into a verb?
You look at what they do in the Cars Tour. If you cause a wreck, it doesn't matter if they think that you have malice or not. You go to the back with the car you wrecked if you cause. So I've heard that float around. I think the severe points is another possible deterrent because, that's how they all get paid at the end of the year anyway. So But I don't think sitting your driver out. There's too many sponsorship and contract obligations that would cause a fiasco amongst the like marketing teams and public relations teams and all that. But I think if you just, I mean, and NASCAR is always in an impossible spot because no matter what they do, half of the
You're going to
fans
have
are,
people pissed, yeah.
yeah, you're going to have some people love it, some people are going to hate it. But if you just make the call and be firm with it and just do it, it's just black flag them right then and there. Granted, I know in the last lap you can't really black flag them because the race is about to be over, but you can give them 0 points for the day.
But if they're managing, sorry to cut you off,
No,
but
you're good.
if they're managing the race, the whole entire race, everybody in the race during the race, that wouldn't have happened. So you could say the Cars Tour thing, which is what Junior recommended, or he essentially
He alluded to it.
He alluded and talked about it. That's a possibility, or you could live try to suspend points or whatever you need to do. Track position, put
Black
them on,
flag them.
black flag them, take them down pit road, reckless driving, 2 laps, whatever. But if they are able to do something like that, take an active action, and you got 15,000 different cameras, all these stats, trajectories, all this kind of stuff that you keep up with.
SMT data.
Like you got all the tools, and it only grows year by year. Why aren't we doing this? I get micromanaging could be a thing for sure. I get it, but it comes to a point when you got kids watching this, they're thinking, "Hey, this is how the people below Cup. This is how they race. I guess I'm gonna start racing like this at my short track. I'm gonna start racing my go-kart like this," and you get people hurt.
Well, I look at it like this. Cole and I used to do a lot of basketball officiating together, and I had the privilege of going through like some proper officiating training with the local county basketball officials.
I didn't.
And they said that the main thing you want to do is be preventive. Always be on the offensive. And if you make a call, even if you realize hindsight it was probably one of the worst calls ever, be confident and you will fool some people. If you just drop the hammer down and say, you know what, that looked egregious, we're going to black flag you. Bring your car down pit road under green. I mean, especially at a place like Martinsville, that can be tough. Because you don't know that you're going to get another caution. I mean, now, it might not have been as bad with this race because there were 14 of them, but still, you do face a penalty. But make the penalty right then and there, and then you ain't got to worry about all these penalties throughout the week and discuss like,
Wasn't enough.
Have this panel of, should we fine them 25,000? Should we fine them 50,000? Let the penalty be from the race, especially in a system where winning is so important. And if you got 0 points on the day, and with no disrespect to Sammy Smith, I don't know that he's a contender every week. So he might have to race for points. He could win. I don't want to take that away from him. He could win, but he could also not win and have to points race. And if he misses out due to points racing up from a Martinsville race, he'll go back to think, you know what? I probably shouldn't have sent this dude on lap 250 or 252, whatever it was, of the Xfinity race, because that made all the difference.
What do you think about Austin here? I want to hear your perspective.
I think Sammy didn't help his case.
Oh no, he was like, I did it. I seen it.
I put him in a wall.
Felt like Dale Senior when I did it.
Yeah, he didn't just rattle his cage. He punted it across.
That cage.
Punted it across.
He rattled about 20.
So I don't think that helps. But if a driver comes in and says, you know what, I messed up, shouldn't have done that, learn from it, be better, I think NASCAR maybe has a different approach to how they handle it. But when you're just like, I did it, felt like Dale. What is it that those Instagram, memes where it's like,
do it for Dale?
No, it's like me at my kid's birthday party at the go-kart place and I'm 10 beers deep and it's just Dale with his glasses on. That's basically what Sammy Smith did. So I think also the attitude that he had, he's like, I'll do it again if I have to. Kind of that attitude. It's like NASCAR is not going to show you a lot of sympathy. But if you come at it and say, yeah, I messed up. I should have had a cooler head. I'll take whatever penalty NASCAR throws my way. They might be a little bit more lenient on their penalty and ease up a bit. So, I agree with y'all. I don't think it needs to be left in the team's hands. NASCAR is the officiating body, and in any other sport, in most cases, it's not the coach, it's not the GM that does it unless they do something in their good.
Keep going, Austin. Keep going. What are you doing?
Unless, a person on the team commits a crime or unless they do something within the team facility. It's the NFL that's handing down the judgment call. It's the NBA that's giving out the suspension. It's the MLB that's putting down those 60-game suspensions for drug abuse or whatever. So NASCAR needs to be the one that lays down the law. Unfortunately, they don't do a good job of it. So, but, I think I agree. I think it needs to be left with NASCAR. NASCAR is the officiating body. The judgment call lies with them. If something happens within a team, then I think that the team needs to handle it. But for the most part, let NASCAR do the ruling.
Well, I think too, like from a fan's perspective, if you're going to make a move like that, you better win the race at least,
or not take your literal teammate out beside of you.
And it's like, dude, you took your teammate out not just of the race contention, but for Dash for Cash, 100,000. You took your own self out for a chance to win 100,000 the next week. So you've missed out on potentially about $200,000 just right there. I don't know what the race winnings would be, maybe 80,000 potentially.
It's 1.6.
Okay, so probably whatever 6% is of that. And also too, like, I think one thing that would help, get these security guards out of the way. I mean, you have somebody like, and I remember a couple years ago, somebody messed with Austin Hill.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
They ain't messing with Austin Hill again, And I know Sammy probably didn't want to fight, but you could tell Taylor Gray wanted to fight. And Taylor Gray could have taught him a lesson because I thought they were even. Like, Sammy Smith pushed him up into turn one.
Yeah, bumped him out of the way.
Yeah. Then Taylor Gray did it. They were even. Both of them were just racing. And so there was no need for him to even feel like he needed to retaliate because they were even. So that's why I'm like, you know what? If you let your fist do the talking, some of these guys will probably think twice that is if you can deliver a good punch.
Who was it that left Sanchez bloody last year? Was it Crafton?
It might have been.
Somebody punched Sanchez in the face last year. I can't remember who it was, but I think it was Crafton.
And lo and behold, you never had a problem out those two again.
I'm curious. How many of y'all have been to a hockey game before? Any kind?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. So, in hockey, they let them beat the tar out of each other until a certain point. And I know that NASCAR is trying to. I don't know what they're trying to do because they'll say that they're against it. Oh man, this isn't good, and then it's on every commercial.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think NASCAR just needs to say, "Hey, look, we'll step in before somebody gets hospitalized." But yeah, you know what? Take some swings. We'll get people out of the way. Once one of them's on the ground, then all right, we're gonna step in. All right, that's too far. But sometimes someone's just got to get learned.
I will say that Gray and Jeb Burton both got fined $5,000 today as well for going to the care center to try to confront a driver. Of course, Sammy Smith was in the care center because he took a heck of a lick. I understand that it caused all this directly, but still, he took a heck of a lick against the wall.
Wait, can you say what the fine was for again?
Going to the care center to confront a driver. So essentially, going out of your way to go into the care center to confront a driver. So if you're not supposed to be going to the care center, which
Oh,
I get because I mean, if you got a driver that's concussed, and you go there and punch him in the head. I mean, kill somebody. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Okay, all right. It took a couple times to register because I'm like, to confront somebody. I'm like, what? But
Are you concussed?
no.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah, I appreciate you checking in on me, man. That means a lot.
Of course.
Yeah.
I remember what happened to you in football. I'm always looking out for you.
Oh yeah, man.
It's a real twisty life, you know. So, I mean, in all honesty, we're just four fans, literally, singular, not sometimes, you know. But it's wild to me that we're sitting here talking about this for 15 minutes when we really don't talk about Austin Hill because I mean, he stayed in contention. He was able to slide the bottom the perfect way. Didn't hit the groove where it would send him out, and he won the race, being the 100th win of RCR's Xfinity, I guess, franchise. For reference, JRM currently has 91. So it kind of gives you a little bit of perspective. You hate to see it because it's such a good storyline, but of course it's going to be absolutely just thrown on the back burner because you got essentially toddlers running around on the track. I mean, in all honesty, and you hate to say that because there's some really clean, good drivers in the Xfinity Series, but they're being absolutely looked over. And I'm not saying Austin Hill's 100% a clean driver because obviously you've seen that car. I mean, it got into some stuff, but you got people like Allgaier, extremely clean driver. I would say Almirola before, you know, the whole ordeal, but he's still not a dirty driver. I mean, but it's all overshadowed just because Sammy Smith decided that he was going to pull the Austin Dillon, except he was just going to wreck one car, right? No, he wrecks the whole freaking field behind him. In all honesty.
Well, I think I'm happy for Childress. I mean, they do have kind of that blue collar feel to their team, right? And that team's always been like one of the classic race fans' favorite teams, right? I mean, that roots back with RC himself and then going to, but obviously with the Big E, right? And Kevin Harvick, I think of Clint Boyer, and lots of good drivers have come through there. So I'm happy for them, but, you know, talk about Sammy Smith, like, how long does it take for him to recover from this? Like, it's going to be interesting to see what the fan reaction is every time he's at driver intros.
I'm pretty sure his reputation for the whole year is just gone. I mean, in all honesty, I don't, especially for his peers. I think that's the one that you should care about more than the fans' reaction. I understand that you sell merch and whatnot, but in all honesty, your peers' respect outweighs anything in regards to the track because they directly influence where you finish on the track.
Well, and like, you look at the ARCA race at Phoenix, that was a fairly clean race for ARCA drivers. The truck series have been, for the most part, pretty professional this year. So it's like, what are y'all doing in the Xfinity Series? I'm like, y'all are one tier away from the Cup, and y'all are doing this. It reminded me of that Atlanta race where the whole race had gone to heck. And then Josh Williams does the park it thing. That whole race was a cluster anyway. And I'm sitting there in the stands thinking, this reminds me of just like that Atlanta Xfinity race where nothing seems to be going right.
So, what'd you think about Austin Hill getting that win, Austin? I know that you ain't necessarily a lover of Austin Hill by any means, but
he got the win.
In the words of a NASCAR great, a win is a win.
Yep. Hey.
And that's literally every driver would say that.
It's no different than Joey winning at Nashville last year. He survived until the end. Wasn't impressive for 99.9% of the day, but he avoided the destruction at the very end and got the win. Good for him. He's still one trick wonder, but
yeah. Would that reference also pertain to the Austin Dillon situation, or is that like an anomaly? Is that like a loophole? Asking for a friend.
I don't know. I was going to ask the same about the Bowman situation at the Roval. So,
well, that wasn't necessarily a wreck though. That was just a kind of a suspension.
I mean,
thing.
well, no, the turtle, the turtle.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you could say that.
We could go down the road of conspiracy on that one for sure.
Well, It's funny enough because another driver had the same thing happen to them this week, and we'll talk about it. But Eric Jones, it wasn't a turtle that did it, but he was not at the right weight, and he finished last. So we'll talk about that. But just a few points before we move on. Gray looked incredibly impressive. Had 5 to 6 restarts where he just nailed it 100%. Like, he was out, he got out on them and didn't have to worry about being bumped from behind because he was gone. So I did want to shout him out, and he was able to defend his positions really well. And he's been really good so far this year. I know I was like, at the start of this year, I was like, I don't know about him in the 54 ride because JGR is a prestigious organization. They got over 200 Xfinity wins in the series. So those rides are very coveted. So to, have a driver where he doesn't have like that big name to it, but he's showing that he's got the performance and the capability of doing it at different tracks. So that's been good to see. Track position was insanely important during the Xfinity Series race. You could also say the same thing about the Cup race because you had instances where like Josh Berry was leading the race and they got put in the back and then he couldn't do anything and then he got involved in all kinds of fiascos after that. But it really showcased with Zilich's car, I feel like, the most. Because whenever he got into that dirty air, man, he could not do anything. Of course, he did have that little bit of damage where he checked up and got into the back of somebody. But it didn't seem like it was enough to be able to screw him that bad. But he was off so bad. And it took him forever to recuperate his losses. So that was that. And also, I hate to mention this, but I'm going to. CW's done a fantastic job all year. 100%.
Absolutely.
But the last bump and going into turn 1 and turn 2. Because they were focused of looking at the 24 car that slammed into the wall in the restart. And the cameraman decided that he was just going to look at him. And you got no shot of the leaders going into the corner. So you have poor Kligerman over there trying to explain what happened when it wasn't shown.
Yep.
So that was a big blunder in my opinion. Which I mean, the race was a crap fest, so at least it wasn't like a fantastic race, where it happened. Like imagine the Kansas race, and then they shoot, when Larson won the Kansas race, and they shot to like someone hitting the wall at 6 when they're coming into the check finish line. It's kind of the same equivalent for Martinsville because those bumps are coming. They're kind of an essential part of the racing there. So, yeah, that's just kind of what I feel like we covered a lot with the Xfinity Series. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Cup. Let's see here. Making sure I got everything put in here. All right, so 10 cautions for 86 laps, 9 lead changes among 6 drivers. Kind of low for a Cup race. 11 got the fastest lap. No shocker. I mean, towards the end of the race, he set sail. Got another point that way to go on top of what he already earned for winning. And P1, you had Denny Hamlin. P2, you had Christopher Bell. P3, you had Bubba Wallace. Great finish for him. 2 consecutive weeks in a row. P4, Chase Elliott. It's kind of a sad finish for him. It's a good finish in general, but in all honesty, I mean, me and Austin talked about it on our phone call before the Xfinity race. We felt like Chase had the car to win, in all honesty. And it looked like it from early going. P5, Kyle Larson. I mean, it's a great track for him, but not as good as Hamlin, Bale, and Elliott, I guess. Ross Chastain, P6. Ryan Preece, P7. That's a great finish for him. I will say that he was sending it into the corners, too. He was not afraid to put it out there.
That's his highest finish at Martinsville, too, I believe. Career.
Yeah. So P8, Logano finally broke that streak of top 10s, not being. So that's good
won
for.
a stage.
Yeah, he did. I kind of wish I would have picked Logano in a way so I could have got the stage win.
Same.
Like we said, I would have more points if I picked Logano.
I would have tied with Kent, man.
Gillen, P10, finally got in the top 10. That's a good top 10 for front row. P11, Ryan Blaney started getting this race, just did not have the car universally, was able to kind of move up and then just kind of faded at the end again. P12, Michael McDowell, that's a great race for him. I feel like he needed that. That kind of stops the bleeding here lately. And P13, speaking about stopping the bleeding, we had Ty Gibbs getting a top 13. So that's great. We would usually insert a joke here, but it seems like our friend Daniel is now a bandwagon Christopher Bell fan, so we're just going to move on from that.
Love you, Daniel.
Drivers that had major issues. Cindric had an electrical issue, being the only car that did not finish the race. And also, Eric Jones had a DQ because he did not meet the weight that.
Did y'all see Fox's jinx?
No.
Because Mike Joy said, so far in this race, we have yet to have a DNF. And then, like 10 seconds later, they cut to Cindric being rolled, and they go, oh, Cindric, it looks like he's going to the garage with an electrical issue. Just completely.
Man, they replaced so many batteries that day, like 4 batteries.
Goodness.
And then the Wood brothers had another.
Well, and someone brought up an interesting point: is the batteries in regards. You can only carry so many. I mean, logically, I think you can carry as much as you want, but like, how many batteries do you expect to go through a race weekend? And then, of course, it being all the same team, essentially, Penske being the main overhead for Wood Brothers. They were like, well, did they have more batteries? Yeah, Blaney and them might have had more batteries, but did they really want to, risk the possibility of them running out of battery power themselves and then being screwed, So it was very interesting, I felt like, when they brought that up. So,
battery strategy.
I just want to say, like, I was really impressed with Joey. Bout got screwed again out of a good finish.
It got Matt Kenseth.
He did, I guess you could say. But the fact that he was able to take being spun out that late in the race and still come back and get a top 10 finish, I was very pleased with that.
I would definitely, if I was a Logano fan, I'd be very happy about that finish, given how that went. That's what I told Blake. I said, was that Matt Kenseth's ghost that came through 3 and 4 and just sent him into the wall? Because it was wild. It has rejoined us. We have moved on to the Cup race, Kent, just so you know, that way. So, Hamlin returns to victory lane at Martinsville exactly 3,654 days from his victory back in 2015, showcasing a car that was absolutely dominant in the last stage and a half. So the last half of the second stage, and then, of course, the last stage, which, I mean, shouldn't necessarily surprise a lot of people. But I swear, guys, I feel like either this progressive sponsorship is giving him a shot in the arm, or the funding that they're getting from this progressive sponsorship has really accelerated the procedures in the garage for JGR, for Hamlin, because the last 2 weeks, they've been hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah, I mean, and you got to think, like, if you're Denny Hamlin and your team is struggling to find you a big-time sponsor, I'm sure he probably thought, well, is this going to end up the way it did with Kyle Busch, right? Because, like, I saw, like, a before and after pic of the hauler. That hauler space, when it came to the sponsorship, was blank. I mean, you had a few side sponsors, but it was pretty much white. It was probably like you would think of like a Truck Series or an ARCA Series hauler. Like, not a lot on it. And now you've got sponsorship, and whether it's just the morale boost or the money boost, like you said, Cole, you can tell it's done a good thing for that team.
I mean, you got to think about how defeating it is to go into a NASCAR season after losing your primary sponsor for over a decade. Like
19 years, almost 2 decades.
Yeah. You think about how hard that is, and you gotta wonder, like, did those thoughts come up? Like, am I washed? Like, am I getting the Kyle Busch treatment here? You know what, Cole?
Just anytime Washed and then Kyle Busch just come together every time.
But for one, I think Progressive is a great addition to the sport. I think his car scheme looks phenomenal. I love the blue. It's just it looks really good. And yeah, I agree. I mean, he looked outstanding Sunday. Like that's the Denny Hamlin on short tracks that we're used to seeing. Dominated, led. And we talked about this in our group chat. I think this is the most dominant race win we've seen this year. Led over half the laps. We haven't seen that this year. Yeah, and honestly, I know, Denny's a controversial personality in NASCAR, but I enjoyed seeing him win the race.
Yeah.
I did too. Honestly, had no issues with him winning the race. It was kind of a boring finish in regards to just being there and watching the laps kind of count down. And, there's 15 trains between him and Bell at that point, is what it felt like. But in all honesty, whenever he was doing his burnout, I was perfectly fine with it. You throw it back to Darlington back when him and Larson were going at it when he won that race. When he won, I was irritated because Denny Hamlin won. Like back at that time, I thought he was just an absolute tool.
Yeah.
I really did. But it's funny how getting older as a fan progresses your thoughts, because I'm not even like a podcast like 100% listener all the time. Like, of course, I'll listen to his podcast every once in a while because you'd be a fool not to. It's very educational. He's very smart. He's one of those drivers that I could see either going into the booth after he retires or going into like car ownership. So being maybe a bigger part of 2311, more like a competitive manager kind of deal thing. So I don't know. It just
Well, I
I'll
think
say you might be onto something with that car ownership
Yeah.
deal.
Huh.
No,
man,
he
never
is
can
an
tell.
owner.
if he partnered with Michael Jordan, they might have a good team.
Okay,
they might
Blake.
win
Blake,
some races.
calm down, Blake.
Hey,
That's too crazy.
Hey, I have an idea. They call it 2311 Racing.
Oh my god,
What a
Yo, and
wild
they can
name.
call their shop Airspeed,
I
bro!
hate you guys.
but they got to get Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick to drive.
I think I'll help rescue you here, Cole, a little bit.
Well, I did mention competitive manager at the end.
Yes, you did.
Like he's going to put like all his resources in it, because obviously when you're driving, you can't put all your attention to detail over there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You don't want to be giving secrets away.
yeah, and I think personally listening to his podcast, I honestly hated him when he first started his podcast, but I've learned a lot from listening to him, and I don't know that I would consider myself a fan of Hamlin, but I don't mind seeing him win as much now.
I don't.
He's not on my top 15 drivers list. He might be in the top 15, maybe not top 10, but we're
He's number 11, right?
yeah, number 11.
I don't hate him as much as I used to, and I don't mind seeing him win. I respect him a lot more. The lawsuit that he's trying to put together with Front Row to try and get teams more funding and get NASCAR to let go of some of that money they're holding on to. I really have appreciated him a lot more for that, because he cares about the sport, because he's been a part of the sport for a long time, and he wants the sport to continue, and he feels in order to do that, NASCAR needs to start handing out a bit more of what they're putting in their pockets, and that I can appreciate. I'm all for these big sports corporations, kind of giving more than they already are giving. There are moments where, yeah, he can be kind of a tool on the track, but I gotta admit, it was funny, though. He gets on there and he waves that flag 11 against the world. I thought that was great.
Well, and I think the more and more that I get into the sport, the more I appreciate dominance and greatness. Like the fact that we lived through the Jimmy Johnson era is a blessing. The fact that we saw the latter part of Jeff Gordon's career, awesome. The fact that we're living through Kyle Larson and the Hendrick guys right now.
All those championships they've won over the last couple of years.
Oh yeah. but especially seeing Denny's dominance on short tracks through his career. I mean, I've lost count now of how many I've seen him win on a short track. And so for the race, I mean, yeah, it was I mean, the last part of the race was obviously not on the entertaining side, but not every single one's going to be a barn burner either. Sometimes one guy just is better. I mean, it seemed like the more green flag laps they ran, the better he got.
At least it wasn't Bristol in the fall. Larson.
Yeah.
That was a domination fest.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
So, at least there was some interest.
Yeah.
Kent, I know you're more on the not negative side in regards to Hamlin, but you have more of a.
No, I'm negative. Definitely.
Oh, are you?
Oh, yeah.
You a
absolutely.
hater? Okay.
I'm a hater. So when it comes to Hamlin, I mean, you can't deny the fact that he'll go down as an all timer.
The best to never do it. Right?
The best to never, and you never want to be the best to never. But I think you don't want to say it, but at the same time, I feel like this is his last legitimate chance to win a championship. Now, I think
getting up there.
he's
really
getting
is.
older. He's running out of steam, and he's running out of years. He's running out of opportunities, and so you can't help but think. And then I look at the season, and I would not call him my favorite to win the championship at all. He might win 3 or 4 more races this season at least. Who knows what he'll do this year. Definitely a great driver, and I would love to look at. And some of y'all may know, under the Winston Cup format, would he have any championships?
I feel like Austin would know. He keeps up with that pretty good. Well, while he's doing that, I'll kind of just rally around this because it does pertain to Hamlin a little bit. Toyo looked incredibly strong at Martinsville. It's probably the best I've seen. I mean, Toyota in general at Martinsville in a while on the Cup level. Of course, you would think, JGR and Xfinity, I mean, they've been dominant, last 2 to 3 years. And then you just had this absolute Toyota fest. It felt like the Hendrick drivers were just not even in the same ballpark towards the end of the race. And I think that's mainly because Toyota had their car set out to do the long run and not the short run. So that's why you've seen Bale fall back a lot towards the end of the race or towards the middle of the race, and then he kind of just convened towards the end. So, I mean, I just wanted to kind of shout out Toyota. I know they're kind of like a minimal kind of team, it feels like, in regards to REM. I mean, most time you think of Chevy and Ford being masculine, America kind of deal thing. You got Toyota being this import, essentially, is what a lot of people think of Toyota, which now a lot of it is constructed and assembled in America.
Yeah, I was about to say Toyota's probably more made in America than what Ford and Chevrolet are right now.
Made in America. Feels like those Sam Elliott commercials.
I was going to say, he needs to voice over the next, Chevrolet commercial. But something about Toyota, they came into the sport back in, was it 2007 was their first season, and they didn't get with Gibbs until 2008, I believe.
That's right.
And so 2007 that they had they had the Red Bull cars, and then in 2008 they partnered with Joe Gibbs for the first time. They had to work hard to find success in this sport. They had to work hard at it because they came in with zero experience in the sport, and they had to work really hard to get to the top. And they got to the top. But one thing I feel like Toyota has done since they got there is they didn't just get to the top and just go, hey, I think we got it now. Let's take it easy. They've continued to press forward and work hard. There was a time there where Chevrolet, y'all remember when Chevrolet introduced the Camaro in 2018, it seemed like they just thought, hey, this thing's going to roll out. It's going to be fast. They won a few poles early in the season. I remember the first race that was not an oval race was Atlanta. It was the, Quick Trip 500. Ryan Newman was on the pole in the 31 Camaro. And I was at that race thinking, oh, yeah, these Chevys, they're going to be fast. And then I think Chase Elliott was the highest finishing Chevy in 10th. And that just became the theme that year. So I say all that to say, Toyota works hard. They get after it. They bust it. If they got a problem with their cars, if there's an issue, they seem to prioritize getting it figured out. And you see a 1, 2, 3 finish on Sunday, and man, has just been rattling some good finishes together. You can't overlook Bubba Wallace.
Last week was third as well, so 2 top 3s, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And a dual win to start the year.
He's someone that he's becoming more and more fun to watch and to kind of see succeed and do well. He's someone that, I'll sit here and tell you right now, I would 100% absolutely much rather see Bubba Wallace win 36 races in a year than Denny Hamlin win 5. I mean, that's just I'll say
Yeah,
that.
I don't take.
But anyways, but Bubba, I mean, just listening to some interviews, seeing him interact, just around the track, he seems like his quality of life has improved. Just he doesn't get as frustrated. He takes it easy, and it's showing up. Like the results are turning out on the track. I think he gets a couple wins this year, sticks around in that 23 without being on the hot seat, but we'll see.
I think he's kind of getting back to that Xfinity, how he was in Xfinity and trucks. I mean, he's becoming that genuine person that he was.
It's Daryl instead
But
of
first, yeah, that's right.
Darrell Wallace.
Austin wants to mention the Hamlin thing that you asked in regards to the Winston.
No, he would have no championships under
Okay.
the old format. But interestingly enough, Jimmy Johnson would not be a 7-time champion. Jimmy Johnson would only
Jeff Gordon
have,
would be.
Yes, Jimmy would only have 3 or 4. Kevin Harvick would be like a 5-time champ.
Especially in 2020, I feel like.
Yeah. Kyle Busch would have another one to his name. Yeah, we'd have like 8 different champions if we used the old format, which is wild.
Yeah, I believe the numbers show Jeff Gordon winning in 04, in 07, and 2014. And I lose sleep over that every night.
Kid just wakes up and screams.
He would have been a 7-time champ. Then right back to sleep, Anyways.
Poor Wesley.
Yeah, I know.
It's like that theme.
He's
It's like the girls, like, I bet he's thinking about other women, and Kent's like, man, we could have witnessed a Jeff Gordon championship.
Jeff Gordon should be the 3rd 7-time. And people will be like, oh, man, Jimmy Johnson, put him on the, on the Mount Rushmore of NASCAR drivers. And I'm not trying to take away from anything Jimmy Johnson's done, right? He's absolutely a GOAT. You put him, all right, so Johnson and Chad Canals, Gordon and Evernham. I'll take Gordon and Evernham every single time. Look at winning percentages. That's just, anyways. All right. That's all I'll say about that.
The bias is coming out.
It's not biased if it's true.
Bias? What?
Yeah.
What bias?
It's not biased if it's true.
That's right.
Did y'all witness the voice crack that just happened?
I don't know what you're talking about. Bubba was doing crack. Yeah, I hadn't cracked in 10 years.
Let me tell you something, brother.
Oh, gosh.
Duluth trading.
Butt naked underwear.
Tire wear, it played an impact. Of course, not as much as the fall. Weather conditions were definitely different. Not as sunny. It was a lot more overcast. But I think a thing that we also forget to mention is they actually cut 100 laps off of this race for the spring race.
Yep.
It should have been 100 more laps. And I think if they did that, you're starting to see that there was a tire change that was starting to go on, because you seen Bale start losing spots like crazy. Like he was backing up. He didn't lose actual spots, but he was about to. Bubba, Larson, Elliott, they were catching them. So you're starting to see that tire really start to show towards the end of the stage, which ironically is also what happened in the fall. There was that long run, and then you had Blaney just kind of knocking people down, just kept catching up, right? But I did want to mention this because I did some research. I feel like I researched a lot for this podcast because I was genuinely interested with this weekend. This was the 6th best rated Martinsville spring race of the Jet Luck era polls. Just to mention the ones that are in front of it. 2017, Brad Kay winning. That was the highest. 89.6% was a yes. Truex from 2021, 88.5. Truex with 2020, 75.1. Even Kyle Busch, 2016, a driver back in 2016, people hated the crap out of Kyle Busch. 74.8. Brad Kay in 2011, pretty classic. 58%. The sixth best rated was Hamlin winning, and it was a 50.9 to 49.1. That's a 50-50 race. And of course, you do have to give some consideration to who won the race, obviously. But then you also look, 27 or 2016, Kyle Busch won the race. Kyle Busch was not a fan favorite, and he still was able to gather, 74.8%. Also, the best race in the next gen car of Martinsville. So, in the spring, let me preface it, in the spring, even considering the fall race, you could say it's probably top 3 overall next gen, because you had Bale's performance as well as Blaney's. What do you guys feel about the tires? Obviously, they were an impact. You've seen the build up on the cars, and of course, you heard the Fox broadcast rave about it the entire time. I went back and watched the race again. I usually try to watch it on TV if I'm at the race, so I can see both sides of the perspective. I saw Clint Boyer go, "Oh, Blaney, 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 Blaney." I'm like, I swear, it's okay to have some bias, man, but this man's wild. What did you guys think in regards to the tire wear? Of course, it wasn't as egregious as it was in the fall, but me and Blake had a different perspective in regards to being there. First 2 stages, we couldn't even tell that the tires were wearing until we got the we went to the entrance to turn 1, sat on the very bottom row, and we see how dirty those cars were. They were filthy. Like, it was like filthy, filthy. But how did you guys view it from, the TV perspective? Did you guys feel like it paid, some dividends bringing in this? Essentially, what was the option tire is what has been explained. Austin, Kent, anything? No?
Well, I'll go from being their perspective. I thought it was a decent race. I wouldn't say it was a great race by any means, but I thought it was a decent race. You could tell that the tires mattered. You had some fun strategy, but it wasn't as, like you said, Cole, it wasn't nowhere near as egregious on the tire as what you would have liked. And I think you had a couple factors that played into that. One, you had the temperature, which was like mid 60s, and you also had 2 other series that had raced there, and so if the track's clean, it's going to wear the tires out more. But if there's so much rubber that's been laid down, it's basically created like this rink, if you will, of rubber, and it makes it to where it doesn't wear as much because it's the tire rubber has just filled up the pores in the track, so you don't have the cheese grating effect of the tires, if you will. And so, but I thought they mattered, just not nowhere near what we would have. Just not what we would have liked to have seen.
Just hearing cheese grater just sent me for some reason. I heard pores and cheese grater. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
No, I thought the racing was good from what I saw. I think Hamlin winning is going to have a negative effect on any poll, But I mean, I still voted yes, and I was surprised to see the results.
I would have voted yes too.
But
obviously,
as a Byron fan, the race that he won, a few years ago, where they just got in single file and ran, that was way worse. And so, I mean, you saw, and I think one of y'all said it maybe in our group chat, but the racing mid pack and on was a lot better. And I think that people need to realize that there's more racing than just what's going on within the top 5. And then the other point to that is you got what you got until they up the horsepower in these things. They should not be having to shift gears on this track. I mean,
Amen.
The gearing ratio, whatever it is, whatever's going on there, they fall in line, and then you think you got to run on the car in front of you, and you're even able to make mistakes. It's just like, well, let me just gear it down and jump on the throttle, and I can pull out of it. You should have to pay for your mistakes. Used to, you got loose, coming off the corner. Bummer. You're going to pay the consequences as three cars line up on your inside headed into the next corner. Now you got loose coming off the corner. Let's back it back down to third. Throttle, throttle up as hard as you possibly can. Come back up through the gears. Get right back in line. So I think that's why you see some drivers that are. I mean, I think the good. I think the good drivers kind of filter out, and they're the ones that are around at the end. Sometimes you can see somebody even in these short track races use strategy to get to the front and end up in a position that they have no business being in. I mean, look at Logano finishing in the top 10. I'm just kidding. I just didn't say that. But in all honesty, you can have somebody who can, kind of filter out to the front, and it's like, man, they got a horrible car. What are they doing up there? And it's just, man, it's just hard to pass. There's no horsepower. You can't make anything happen.
We were talking about how Toyota came in and how they had to work so hard. That's because you had almost 1,000 horsepower cars. The sport was bad to the bone back then, and Toyota wanted to be a part of that. And now it's like the reason they won't add the horsepower is because they want to add another manufacturer. And it's like, why would you want to? It's just from a fan's perspective. To me, it doesn't look good if somebody like Honda wants to come in and is like, oh, yeah, we got in because the cars are slower. It's like, what kind of alternate universe is this? But
It's called 2025,
I
baby.
guess, yeah. But I agree with you, Kent. I mean, and I know I talk a lot about tires on here. It really is a Band-Aid for this short track package car, because
it's honestly a Band-Aid for the entirety of the car, it seems like.
Well, you've got so much downforce. You've got so much downforce in these cars. I mean, it doesn't really. That's why your dirty air plays so much into it, and it's so aerodynamic, and you're shifting. And I don't want to just echo everything Kent said, but they gotta just. I'm to the point. I like just give them the Xfinity cars at this point. You'll have better drivers, so I don't think you'll have all the chaos, but you'd see a much better short track race. I'm like, it's tough. And I am curious on that good race poll, Cole. What was the fall of 2022?
Oh, 2022. I can look it up.
Because that race,
real quick.
if it's
rough.
Yeah. If it's higher up, it's only because of the wall ride. Because that race sucked for the most part.
2022, you said?
Yeah, 2022 fall Martinsville.
All right, hang on
Martinsville
1 second.
2.
All right, well, y'all keep talking while I'm doing this because I am fat finger over here.
Yeah, and I'm just curious. We saw it when we sat down low for you guys who watched it on TV. Did they show how tore up these Cup cars were? Because I tell you, okay, good. Because when we went down, especially a Buscher's car with that the taco car, oh my gosh, that thing looked like it had been in a demolition derby.
So Martinsville 2 was 78.9, 21.1 no. For comparison, the Martinsville spring race was 18.7 yes, 81.3 no.
So in context, that fall Martinsville race of 2022 was essentially an 18 until the wall ride, probably.
Yeah.
So this is probably overall your second best Martinsville race overall in the next gen era.
You also had Christopher Bell winning his way into the championship for.
That's true. I don't want to discredit that. That is true. But quality of racing, this was definitely the second best, just in my opinion.
That's fair. All right, we're going to move on here. So I'm going to prepare you guys for Darlington. We don't got no trucks this week, sadly. I love truck races at Darlington. But we got the Sports Clip FVW Help a Hero 200. So you had a couple of open drivers, Nick Lentz in the 07. You got Ross Chastain in the number 9, starting for JRM. So that's his second start. Coda was his first. Chase Elliott in the 17. Christopher Bell in the 19. 32, Austin Green. 35, Graham Van Alst. Number 45, Mason Massey. Number 74, Dawson Cram. And number 91, Josh Balicki. There will be 2 cars that do not make this race. So, Balicki. So, and then the Goodyear 400, the Cup race. There are 2 open drivers, J.J. Yaley in the 44, and making his Cup start, the first one of this year, just was announced, and the United Rentals 33.
So we have OG Ty Gibbs. Cool.
We're just going to throw it to the 4 wide segment here. Kent is going to give us a little bit of a history about Darlington. So we're looking forward to that. Very prestigious racetrack to have some history to talk about.
And no real history at this place. Nothing exciting's really ever happened here. Who's next? I'm just kidding. So I didn't realize this until I started digging. Arlington was the first track to host a 500-mile event. So that's pretty wild. But when I started thinking about, some of these races, back then it was man versus machine, right? Like it was, will they get to the end? Will the car make it to the end? Nowadays, as long as you don't have a 12 on your roof, then you know that you probably got a good shot of your equipment making it to the end.
Dang.
So, yeah, I know that was brutal. As long as I don't pick you, you got a good shot of making it to the end. Wish that we would see NASCAR push equipment the way that they used to, right? And I understand that there are some safety reasons for different things. I don't think there's a good reason for the lack of horsepower other than getting other manufacturers in. But I think some manufacturers would want to. I mean, if you came from the viewpoint of, hey, look, you really get to flex, you really get to flaunt your stuff and show up and show that you can beat the best and one up them at their own game, that sort of thing. That would be cool too. And I think that could, get a lot of folks excited about it. But anyways, but yeah, I mean, to think about back in the day, I mean, especially Darlington's a track that, egg-shaped track. It's tough. I mean, it's tough on cars. They call it the lady in black for a reason, right? Because, they tend to ride the wall because, that's going to tend to give some of the best, banking and speed so you can have the momentum down the straightaways, and then there's another line that typically gets run, and that's where you enter really high and then kind of, come down towards the bottom of the banking mid corner. And then as you exit, you're right up against the fence. And so, it's a badge of honor to get your Darlington stripe. And in this car, you don't have to worry about that, causing a tire rub, or anything crazy. These cars have a whole lot more give to them. And they can take a lot more of a beating. And so I think you see drivers get a little bit more brave with how close. I mean, you saw Larson and how brave he gets driving up against the fence, which he was that way before the next gen car. But these drivers get a little bit more brave, knowing that if you get in the fence, it could hurt your lap. But it's more about who can be the bravest and stay in the throttle on exit and keep it off the fence and get the most track position and keep the most momentum. But you can't talk about Darlington without talking about one of the best finishes in NASCAR history. And, there's been several great ones. I love, everything that went into, if y'all recall, when Chase Briscoe in the Xfinity Series held off Kyle Busch in 2020, I believe, because I don't think there were any fans in the stands for this race. And you look at the emotion of that race. Chase Briscoe crawls out of the car, and I believe that's where we found out that his wife had miscarried earlier in that week. And so you think of the emotions that had to have been going through, and you can't help but to have been heartbroken for Chase Briscoe at the time. But then to see him in that moment where it was even hard for him to celebrate and understand what he had just done, holding off one of the best to ever, let's just say the best to ever do it in an Xfinity car in Kyle Busch, and winning that race. But, you have finishes like that, and then you have finishes like in my opinion, the greatest finish in NASCAR history. And there's people that'll say, no, Atlanta, of last year was better because it was 3 wide and it was close. And others that'll say, well, man, it ain't even the closest anymore. When you see Ricky Craven coming off of turn 4 with that 97, was it Rubbermaid or Sharpie? That was, I think it was Rubbermaid on that car, with Kurt Busch wheeling it, and these two guys trying to drag each other back, just absolutely door to door. You talk about good racing, you talk about clean and respectful racing, but an exciting finish. That's peak NASCAR, in my opinion. You can have whatever opinion. There's been several exciting finishes in NASCAR. So to say that one is the best from a fact standpoint, I can't really say that. But from a pure entertainment, this is as good as it gets in NASCAR. Bad handling vehicles, and then you get a guy like Ricky Craven. Everyone can hear DW's voice. Craven got him. Just one of the most electric. I feel like we all wish that energy would be back in the booth, right? You could just inject that straight into my veins. Craven got him. Craven got him. That was just one of the most iconic moments ever for the sport. And, there's interviews of Kurt Busch saying that he'll tell that story. And as he's recounting that story, he wants to be like, and I got him. And it's like, nope, didn't get him. But if you have not seen that finish, we're going into race weekend at Darlington. You've got to go back. It's all over the place. I know you can find it on YouTube. NASCAR is going to post it about 35 times this week at some point. But Craven and Kurt Busch battling it for the win. Craven by a nose. One of the, if not the greatest finish all time in NASCAR. Would you all agree? Like, I feel like that's got to be the all time best.
It's definitely high up there. Definitely my favorite Darlington finish.
By far.
Yeah.
But I would recommend watching that entirety of that race. That race was a really good race overall. It really was. It wasn't just a fantastic finish. It was just an overall good old school NASCAR race. So,
Absolutely.
I don't know, because you have good finishes, and then you also got Bobby Allison or Donnie and Kelly Yarborough, stuff like that. But that didn't really have to do with the race result. But you have other stuff that kind of goes into it. But I swear, just the way that cars are now when they race each other, they're taking the air off doors and stuff. But they were really taking the air off each other.
Yeah.
There was no air to be had. I say it's my favorite for sure. I would say it's the best and my favorite.
I remember my dad recorded on his VHS. He recorded the last half of that race because we had to go to church, and so we left for church, came back, and we watched it. And I just remember watching that finish with my dad. Did Kurt get him, or did Craven win? Which one was it? And so that obviously has nostalgic kind of feel to it, and it's probably top 3 favorite finishes of all time. For me, I don't think I'd say it's my favorite. I think the one that made me go was the Atlanta 3 wide. That was just absolutely insane. But as far as Darlington finishes go, my favorite race was the one that me and Blake went to a couple years ago.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're
where
going to say.
Eric Jones in the 3
Yeah.
wins at Darlington 60 years to the day that when Richard Petty won at Darlington. That was
2022.
2022.
That was a special one.
Yeah, that was really cool. And the fact that me and Blake got to be there and witness that in person, we both were hyped for Eric Jones, because we all know that Eric Jones, he
rough
deserves
career.
he deserves a lot better than what he drives.
Oh yeah.
But that one's number one for me. And then right under that is the Craven Bush finish.
It's kind of ironic that you say that. Is the of course, when I was looking up the stats for 2022 for the Jeff Gluck poll, that was the top race for 2022. That was a 93.1 yes. And also, you can ask Blake and Austin. They asked me, like, hey, Cole, who do you think's going to win this race? And I swear to you guys, there's no video evidence, but I said Eric Jones is going to win this race. And sure enough, he did win that race.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say it's a great finish. I personally don't remember it. I was too young to remember it. My favorite finish is probably 2018 Chicagoland with Junior's first race in the booth, where Bush and Larson are just going at it, um, and they're really racing hard, and Junior's like slide job, and so it's just because I felt like that was an iconic moment. I mean, Dale Jr.'s first race, you couldn't have scripted that one any better. And I remember watching that. I'm like, what a finish. um, I I mean, Kansas last year was pretty cool. The Atlanta one was, but I would say probably the best finish of early 2000s NASCAR by far. I mean, yeah, I would say
It also comes to that point where it's like recent memory kind of triumphs old school sometimes.
Yeah.
It really, because it feels more relevant now because we're living in it. But sometimes when you go back and really watch it, you're like, you know what? I could totally like see myself changing perspective if I was from this generation. In all honesty.
yeah.
But I don't know. I'm more of like I'm not gonna say I'm a scholar to the game by any means, but I do like going back, and I know Austin does too. Like going back and watch older races and whatnot. I definitely know Kent does as an historian. But
It's like what you said, Kent. That call is legendary. Craven got him. Craven got him. It reminds me of shout out to any Bama fans that may listen to this, but it reminds me of the Bama versus Auburn game where the field goal kick return. Auburn's going to win the football game. It's iconic, iconic.
You're a Georgia fan, and you didn't even mention Larry Munson. You jumped straight to that. Nah, we disown you. We disown you. You're not a real dog.
Excommunication.
Come on, man. Man, you could have said, run, Lindsay. But no, you said that. You could have said steel metal chair. But no, you said that. Golly, man. You could have said hobnail boot, but you said that. Anyways.
oh man, is that what you got, Kent, for today?
That's what I got. Just some reminiscing on one of the greatest moments. I think you could say one of the greatest moments in the history of the sport.
I really appreciate it. That was a really good perspective to really take in. So I'm gonna throw it to old Austin here because it makes sense to kind of go to the track next and talk about
Yeah.
all the different changes that Darlington's had.
Yeah, so like we said, Lady in Black, Too Tough to Tame. The reputation speaks for itself. We talk about how Homestead is a track where you do not luck into a win. Darlington is equal in that facet. It is not a place where you luck into a win. You earn every bit of what you do. Construction for Darlington began back in the 90s, and the reason I'm bringing this up, I know Kent's already touched on history, but this is an important aspect of history because it gets us to where Darlington is today and the track we know it to be. Development of the track went well until a neighboring landowner asked the track developer to slightly alter the track's western end. A man named Sherman Ramsey, he had a nearby minnow pond, and at this day and time, minnow ponds were sacred grounds in rural North and South Carolina. But the original design of the track, if they would have made it like a traditional oval, would have destroyed the minnow pond. So they agreed to reconfigure what we know today as turns 3 and 4 to preserve the pond, which is still there to this day, and race fans can see it on race weekends if they so desire. that's an interesting piece of history because, Darlington is unique. We call it an oval, but it ain't really an oval. It is a egg-shaped track. The track measures just under a mile and a half, but it is close enough. But when you look at an overhead of Darlington, you can see the major difference in the turns. Turns 1 and 2 on the eastern end of the track are sweeping, they're wider, somewhat flatter even, while turns 3 and 4, it's tight, abrupt, and steeply banked. The patch of water is that one patch of water, a minnow pond, is the reason why turns 3 and 4 are designed the way they are. Ricky Rudd said back in 1991 that the design is what makes Darlington such an interesting track. He said you can run good on one set of turns, but absolutely suck in the others. You can run well in turns 1 and 2 where it's flatter and more wider, but absolutely suck in turns 3 and 4 and really not have a good race. The reason that Darlington exists as a track is because it was originally created to rival the Indy 500 spectacle with stock cars, just on Labor Day weekend. The guy that created it, he wanted to have a 500-mile race on a holiday weekend, and because of that, we have the Southern 500 on Labor Day. I say all this because it matters when looking at what to expect when we're coming into this weekend. It's throwback weekend, so history is huge when we're looking at Darlington. Why the track is the way it is, because it is so unique. But getting into the specs, front stretch has a banking of 3 degrees. It is 1,229 feet long. It carries into a long turns 1 and 2 that has 25 degrees of banking. As I mentioned earlier, it's a sweeping, wider turn. Then it carries to a backstretch with about 3 degrees of bank, carrying into turns 3 and 4. These are the shorter turns. Turns 3 and 4 are a banking of 22 degrees, and it is a tighter turn than turns 1 and 2. I would say that the key to success here is survival. The key to racing here is you have to run a lot closer to that wall than you would probably like to run. And we mentioned, you can ride the wall, but there is another lane you can run. However, as the race goes on, that other lane is a lot less popular to run as the tire wear continues. For the majority of the race, they're running up against the wall. That's where we get to that infamous Darlington stripe. There will be more than likely a Darlington stripe counter on the broadcast, counting how many times people have hit the wall. Unlike Homestead, where everyone can race basically wherever, in Darlington, you don't really have a choice. You have to run closer than you want to the wall. The other is managing the tire wear, especially if you go to Darlington in person. It is painfully obvious as these green flag runs go on. The cars get a lot slower. Guys who are good here, Denny Hamlin, of all the active drivers, has the most career wins here. 4 career wins. Eric Jones has 2. Outside of that, you don't have a lot of repeat winners at this track. It is a hard track to repeat at. But at this point, I will hand it over to Blake. Blake, I couldn't find when the most recent repave was. Maybe if you know, mention it. But I'll hand it over to Blake to handle the tire wear at Darlington.
Yeah, so the repave is actually it's an interesting question. So it was repaved after the 2007 race, but turn 2 had I guess you could say a brief repave. They only paved turn 2 in 2021. So the bump coming off of turn 2 was getting to the point it was just almost undrivable. So they only paved that part. So full track 2007, turn 2, the latest is 2021. So that's that on the repave. But when we get to the tires, you said it perfectly, Austin. You can obviously tell that this track has some fall off, and this track is abrasive. And this tire that they're doing, it's actually really interesting for this week. The tires will actually have a picture of the Goodyear blimp on them because Goodyear is celebrating their year anniversary this year. And they are also the title sponsor of the race, like Cole said. So appreciate Goodyear for all they do for our sport and for how just supportive that they are. And they're doing a great job as of lately bringing more conducive racing tires to the track. So we're super grateful for that. The specific tires are going to be the same tire that you saw last year run at both races. And if you remember in the fall, and I know Cole, you and Austin were there was a short stint where some people had only ran about 3 to 5 laps and another caution came out. Some people came down and pitted, and it mattered. They were able to pass a lot of cars on just 5 lap fresher tires. So that is how abrasive that this track is, and also it is going to be hot and slick on Sunday. Here in the Carolinas, it is going to be about 87 on Sunday, so that's going to probably put your track temperature at about 120, 130, somewhere around there. So it's going to be a warm one. That's going to be tough on the tires too, especially because of the tire temperature.
It's going to be warm all weekend too. Saturday too is going to be a scorcher.
And the Xfinity race, those tires are 15-inch in diameter, and so they've got less tire. Obviously, that's going to wear out quicker than what your 18-inch diameter ones will. So those, you might see much more fall off in the Xfinity race than what you probably will the Cup race. But it's just overall, I think the biggest takeaway is this is going to be a tribute to Goodyear, their 100th year in business, and what they do for our sport. I've got some Goodyear tires on my car personally. They're fantastic tires, and I do love that they've been loyal to our sport, because not many companies have been as loyal to our sport as Goodyear has. And so as a fan, I try to be good to them.
But they'll also have, instead of your usual yellow lettering on the sides, there'll be a nice white color for Throwback Weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, so watch out for the tire strategies this weekend. Could be fun if you get some short runs, but if you're a crew chief, you're going to want 4 fresh Goodyears for the most part this weekend.
I think also what contributes to the tire wear is it's a very sandy kind of environment down there as well. Sand gets into the track, and it's just very abrasive on the cars, and that's one of the reasons Darlington is one of my favorite tracks. Is just because, like I said, you don't luck into a win there. Like, you just don't.
No, and I wouldn't even call him a bad driver, but the only driver that didn't have more than one Cup win who's ever won there that I can think of is Regan Smith. He also didn't have great equipment at that time, and so the fact that he pulled that off in 2011 was really remarkable.
I guess when you mention, I feel like I have to say this, when you mention Goodyear and the 100th year anniversary of them as a business, my mind immediately goes to Dave Marcus. Like the Goodyear hat and everything, which if you've never heard about like Hoosier versus Goodyear back in the day with NASCAR, look that up. That's really cool stuff. There's a whole deep history with that. Kent knows all about it, but we can't get into it today, in all honesty. But, might be something that we bring up maybe later in the podcast. We have a week off, which we shouldn't because Xfinity and trucks usually run with Cup don't. Anyways, I feel like the main thing from a fan's perspective, if you're going to Darlington, especially since it's throwback this weekend, Darlington is essentially a time capsule. You walk into that track, and it's exactly how it was. Maybe a few renovations, but it's very minimalistic. They keep it old school because that's like its true sell value. Don't expect all the bells and whistles that you would get at like a Phoenix Raceway or a newer racetrack or one that NASCAR's kept up because even in all honesty, North Wilkesboro, it's a time capsule in itself, but it's more of like an upgraded time capsule.
For sure.
Darlington is old school as old school gets. I mean, in all honesty. And that's the main selling point when you go to Darlington. Even if you go, to the Southern 500 in the fall, it may not be throwback weekend, but it's just so cool. I swear to you guys, if there's 3 racetracks you got to visit, in your lifetime, Darlington has to be one of them. At least go once. It doesn't matter if it's a spring race or a fall race. Both races are fantastic. Of course, you got the playoff implications in the fall, and you have the throwback weekend in the spring. It used to be the throwback weekend and the race in the fall were together, which I thought was awesome.
I think they started that the first year. The first year they did that, where we were there for that.
We were, and it was really cool.
Yeah.
And they were really embracing that old school persona of the track. But of course, now where they have 2 races every year, they kind of have to have a selling point for the first race. So of course they've moved that over. But that's the main thing. Of course, you're going to have your fan experiences and whatnot. You go to your merch haulers and stuff like that. But really, if you're going to the track, take it in. Look at everything. Look at those turns. Look at that wall. I mean, there's so much character in that track.
Look at the towers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Red.
Yeah. I mean,
towers.
in all honesty, you walk into that track, even when you're outside the track, you can feel it.
Yeah.
In all honesty. So that would be my main thing. As a fan's perspective of Darlington, take it all in, look at it, and don't expect, your technical advances. Of course, you got your Wi-Fi and whatnot, sure. But really just enjoy being there, because it's literally like being thrown back into 1970. You could envision your old school drivers like Cale Yarborough, Richard Petty racing on the exact same racetrack that you're watching Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell run on that high side. So I felt that was important to say.
Pro tip: if you want to get a chance to get some autographs, go soon as the race is over, or give it a little bit of time, but run over to the main straightaway. The broadcasters have one way in and one way out. So me and Blake, we've had our heartbreak a couple times. We almost got Dale Jr. Rusty Wallace walked right past us. But it's just a little pro tip. Just after the race, wherever you're sitting, go to the outside the main concourse, onto the main paved area. Go to the big elevator. Can't miss it. And who knows? If you time it right, you may get a Harvick autograph. You may get a Boyer autograph. You may get a Joy autograph. You never know.
That's just beautiful track, great experience, must go. I know we're just rubbing in Kent's face right now, but we've told him he's coming with us to the fall.
Yeah,
we're going to kidnap him. We're going to do whatever we got to. It's going to be an emergency trip. It's like IV related. So, spicy takes. All right, recap from last week. None of us hit ours. Gio did not win, much to the dismay of Blake. Priest did not get a top 3. He got another top 10, though, so that's good momentum for him. The pole sitter did not win the race, Austin. I know that's sad to say. Another year.
That's close.
Yeah, you're close. 1 point off. 1 position off. Logano, no top 10. That was a fail on Kent's part. Now he'll get to choose something different. He said he was going to choose it every week till Logano proved him wrong. So I'm going to throw it immediately to Kent to put him on the hot seat.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
You're welcome, buddy.
Man, a hot take for Darlington. Man, I got 2 series to pick from. Hot
take. There will be no truck race this week.
Hot take.
Lane Riggs wins the Xfinity race.
Yeah. Let's I'm gonna say Briscoe. I'm not gonna say, and I may not. This might be as hot of a take as Blake was gonna say, or or whichever one of y'all was just whispering. But anyways,
yeah, it was me.
Yeah, I will say Briscoe. I was eyeballing him. He's gonna prove why he deserves that 19 car, and I'm not gonna say he's gonna win outright. But I'm going to say he's going to very much be a contender for the majority of the race. And Briscoe's going to turn some heads and finish top 5 in the 19 car. I'm not saying emphatically this is going to be his first one of the season, but Briscoe leads a lot of laps, finishes top 5.
All right, Blake. Well, it feels like a natural transition to go to you since you're like, oh, man.
This is going to be out there. But I say that there are no cautions for wrecks on Sunday.
Dang, that's like an Austin.
I think
Blake, you do realize that Stenhouse is in the field, right?
that's true.
And
And Ty Gibbs.
Cody Ware.
Yeah, but I think with how hot it is, I think you're going to kind of have. You might have like some 2023 Richmond vibes.
Oh, gosh.
Where it was. I think
All right. Nobody watched the race.
No, I think you'll have. Except I think you're going to have fantastic racing. But I think you're going to. People are going to want to pit quicker, so they're just going to come down for tires more on the green, and I'm going to go with that.
All right, Austin, what you got?
Justin Haley gets the top 10.
I like it. Cole Custer wins the race on Sunday.
Tell us.
So,
why.
Xfinity Series, he ran 5 races at this race. His average finish was 3rd. 4 top 5s. Haas is great. I mean, you got to think of last year who won the race in the fall. Briscoe did. And what equipment was he in? Stuart Haas. Xfinity Series equipment's always been good there. I think it's a good hot take because it's spicy, but it's perfectly valid. So that's my spicy take for the weekend. And if Cole Custer wins, he owes me a steak dinner somewhere.
Chase Briscoe's going to finish P36 after what Kent just said. So
Yeah, he's picking Briscoe this weekend.
I'm not picking Briscoe to win, at least not yet. I mean, who knows what could happen.
I was going to say, please.
My hot takes, things have been late. I mean, even Logano, I mean, he was like towards the back end of the top 10. So it wasn't, I mean, we're still no top 5. So I don't know.
You know what would suck, though? If you couldn't pick Kyle Larson for Darlington, that would really suck.
actually, it could be me, but I got a win off of it.
Couldn't be me.
At least I got a win out of my pick.
Let
me check. I got it up.
Ain't that way. I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I said it, because I knew Blake was the.
Well, guess who definitely isn't gonna win this weekend?
Yeah, Kyle Larson. He's gonna pull a Homestead.
No, do what he did last year in the spring race.
Oh, that's true.
Pop a tire.
Hey, he pushes it so hard some of these races that he outdrives his equipment and it just wrecks it.
That's what makes him so good. Is he's willing to go that extra mile.
That's right. Those cars like no.
Not happening. All right, Austin. This is all yours, buddy.
All right, I'll try to make it quick. All right, so we don't have trucks this week, but we can recap what happened with trucks this past week. I won this week, picking Ben Rose, who finished P5. Cole came in second with Riggs at P11. Blake came in third with Byron, finishing P14. And Kent came in last with poor Corey Day, P32.
He cursed his weekend.
But we will not pick the trucks until Bristol next week. And then after that, we won't pick till Rockingham weekend. Regular season standings, I've taken the lead with 16 points. Blake is in second with 13. Kent third with 11. Cole rounding out the bottom with 10, but he is gaining ground. He is no longer in single digits. So, championship predictions, Blake has Heim locked in, and Cole this past weekend locked in Hemrick with his championship prediction. So we will cover truck for Bristol next week. Looking at Xfinity this week, once again, I came on top in Xfinity with Algar. I finished in P. Blake second with Almirola at P13. Kent with Quapple P20. And then Cole, unfortunately, Sanchez finished P32 after wrecking in the race. With that, the regular season standings, I'm in first place with 21, Cole second with 19, Blake third with 16, Kent last with 14. All of us have our championship predictions locked in. But now it's time to pick for Darlington. And so Cole is the first up. He cannot pick Love, Allgaier, or Sanchez. So Cole, who are you taking for Darlington?
I'll take the number 19 this week.
That's solid.
Christopher Bell.
Okay. All right. Kent, you are picking third or next. You cannot pick Allgaier, Almirola, or Travis Quapple.
Give me Elliott.
You're going to ruin this man's week again. I'm kidding.
I'm going to do it.
He's going to curse him for Sunday, too.
Blake Balake, you are up next. You cannot pick. Basically, Quapple.
Give me Allgaier.
Okay.
Who
And
else he's probably going to pick?
I'm going to.
This guy may have won Darlington before in a truck. That's still on the board.
Chastain?
Yep. He won a truck race.
I think he won it last year, actually.
Yep.
Yeah, why not? Saves me a pick for Bristol. So
You're welcome.
I was going with either him or Christian Eckes, but I'll go Chastain. All right, that is Xfinity. Now, rolling into Cup, I won my 5th straight race.
Sweeping the weekend.
I'm glad I had a Daytona 500 win.
Man,
I tried to ride that high too long.
I just want something like,
I looked it up.
just one.
You haven't won 15 races.
It's like the dog underneath the table begging for the scraps.
Which race was
I
it
don't
that
know.
Kent won?
It was Daytona Summer.
Okay.
That's my last win.
That was
That was before he forgot to pick that week.
yep. That's been downhill.
That's golly. Maybe I should just forget again, and then maybe it'll two
Reset.
wrongs make it right.
Maybe it'll reset. The day you get it, you need to buy a lottery ticket or something.
Heck, we'll buy lottery tickets
for
you.
real. Martinsville, all of our guys finished within the top 5. I picked Hamlin. Hamlin finished P1. I also got the winner correct on back-to-back weeks for Cup. Cole finished second, with Bell finishing P2. Kent finished third, with Elliott finishing P4. And Blake finished last, with Larson finishing P5. Saving Larson.
Usually a P5 pick wouldn't be bad, but
Yep.
here we are. You can finish last. Yeah, you can finish last if your driver finishes 4th, or you can finish first if your driver finishes 33rd. So that's just how it goes.
That is how it goes.
It is what it is.
Looking at the regular season standings, I have the lead with 25 points. Cole is in second with 18. Blake is third with 16. Kent is last in 14. Hopefully he can get that win and get that monkey off of his back. So looking ahead, Blake will have first pick this week going into Darlington. Who is one guy, Blake? You can't pick Bell. You can't pick Byron. You can't pick Larson. Those are some tough guys
That's tough.
to not be able to pick.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
That's like Kent last during Martinsville.
Yeah.
I somehow
Yeah.
squeaked out a third. Anyways,
But who are you looking at, Blake?
If he's got a good practice in qualifying, I gotta go Hamlin this week. That would be the logical pick.
I'd hate not having him for Bristol though. That'd be tough.
Well, true, but I mean,
It's
I'm in a bad spot right now. So
You did it to yourself.
who gets knocked off for me this week? Is it Bell or
For this week, yeah, Bell. Bell's off your list.
he's
this
a
week.
good one to have for Bristol.
He is.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so Blake is looking at Hamlin. Next up is Kent. Kent, you cannot pick Hamlin, Blaney, or Elliott. It looks a lot better for you this week. Who are you looking at going into this weekend?
I've got to look at something first. So the next few races,
Bristol, Dega, and Texas.
Yeah.
Those next 3.
So I wouldn't. Yeah, I would probably, my first choice would have to be Larson right now. It'd be hard not to pick Larson because Bristol, I've got a lot of good options. Talladega's a crapshoot, anyways. Texas,
Essentially a crapshoot.
it can be. So yeah, I'd probably go. I'd definitely, yeah. As of right now, I would go Larson, but I mean, I could see myself, if Byron shows up, qualifying practice, that sort of thing, going Byron. I could also, I mean, after the last 2 weeks he's had, just a little bit of a,
Don't steal my pick. I know exactly who you're about to say. That's who I was going to say.
I am not going to say it. You say it.
It's Logano.
No, that's not what I was going to say.
Yeah, it was. He said the last 2 weeks. Come on now.
No, I was going to say Bubba Wallace.
That's fair.
All right, Cole,
Logano.
You going Logano?
Yeah, probably.
Well, you can't pick him this week.
Oh yeah, can I not?
Nope.
When did
It's a
I
bummer.
I picked him for Vegas, wasn't it?
Yep.
And he absolutely just sucked.
Yep.
Who can he not pick?
He can't. He can't.
I'll pick Byron probably.
Yeah, he can't go Logano, Reddick, or Bell.
It would be nice to have Reddick, especially as strong as he was last year. But honorable mention to Chris Buescher. I would definitely consider Chris Buescher for this race.
And then I'm next. Myself, personally, there's a couple guys I'm leaning towards. It's a toss-up between Reddick and Keselowski. I know Brad has not had a good year at all to start off with, but he always seems to do halfway decent at Darlington. But honestly, I'm leaning Reddick because Reddick has a lot of laps led here. I feel like he's due for a win. If I'm looking at the tracks ahead with Dega being a crapshoot, Bristol, it's kind of you have your guys, and in all honesty, I don't think Reddick is that good on short track racing. So I think I'm going Reddick. So that is what we have for the NASCAR competition that we do each week for each race. But we'll see how things go at Darlington.
After that is Bristol, baby. All right, bye, guys. See you later.
Peace out.